Hi students, so in the last class itself we have already discussed response to environmental conditions, or we used it as abiotic conditions, isn't it? Abiotic stress is how the living organisms are responding. So in this section what we are going to discuss is that the same thing to some extent I will be explaining, and then we will follow with the next. Okay. So what are the different ways by which environmental stress can be responded by living organism? By regulation, by conformation, by migration, and by suspension, isn't it? So first is regulation, second one is conformation, third is migration, fourth one is suspension. Clear? So regulation, you know, we are maintaining homeostasis. We mammals are maintaining what? Homeostasis. We are having a constant body temperature. The temperature of our body is not changing according to the environment. We maintain a constant body temperature. Now when you are moving to the next one, how do we regulate our body temperature? By thermoregulation or by osmoregulation. Okay. And next, when you are seeing conformers, they cannot maintain a body temperature constant, so their temperature changes with the change in the environment. Okay. That is what we saw about what? Conformation. Clear? Then we went on migration. Migration we have already discussed, migrating from one place to another. For short duration you want to escape during winter, so from some Siberian crane and all, from some place they are migrating to some areas where they can live for some time, again they will go back. Okay. So that one we call it as what? Migration. And the last one was suspension. Suspension we discussed that temporarily suspending. Okay. Like the metabolism is not taking place, they are going for sleep, rest. Okay. Like polar bear, hibernation of frogs, certain reptiles, polar bear, estivation of snail and fishes we discussed. Seeds also, when you see, they remain dormant, they are not going to come out unless they are getting the favorable condition, isn't it? And we also discussed one term called as diapause in zooplanktons, where the developmental stage itself is arrested until the favorable condition result. When the favorable condition comes, they will be going for the next developmental stage. Okay, so that was diapause. So suspension is also over. Now we are going into the new topic today, that is adaptation. So what is the topic today? Adaptation. You know what is adaptation? Adaptation is you are adapting to the changes in the environment. How organisms are adapting to the changes in the environment, because environment is not the same, it keeps on changing. So how the organisms are adapting to the environment is what we are going to discuss today. Okay. So number one is it is the attribute of organism, that is morphological, yes, physiological morphology, external changes, or functionally physiological changes, or in the behavior there is some changes that enables an organism to survive and reproduce successfully in its habitat. So in its place, which and all characters will they have to adapt so that they can survive in that place, that one we call it as what? We call it as adaptation. Okay. So changes what and all in morphology, it can be physiology, function, or it can be behavioral changes. Okay. Like examples we are going to discuss. Okay. So adaptation. So you are coming to Mount Sinai from some other school. How you are adapting to the Mount Sinai, isn't it? So that is adaptation. You want to adapt. Now kangaroo rats, when you are seeing, meets is water requirement. Okay. So they want water. So how they are making use of the water which is very scarce there, they are usually oxidizing the fat. In that the byproduct is released as what? Water, and that water is utilized by them. Along with that, the desert animals, when you are seeing, they urinate very less amount of water, urine, so that the water is not lost in the form of urine, it is being preserved. Okay. So that are the various ways by which the desert animals are adapting. Now when you are seeing the desert plants, what do they have? They have very thick stem. Okay. So the stems are very thick and they have a very thick cuticle. Cuticle is what? The outer covering of the leaves. Okay. Or the stems, that is made up of what? A very thick coating. That thick coating we call it as what? We call it as cuticle. Okay. And they also have what? Shrunken stomata. Okay. Stomata and shrunken means what? Like for example, this is the outer covering of the leaf. Okay. So when you are seeing, this is the outer covering of the leaf. So this outer covering, if you are seeing, this outer covering is having the stomata shrunken. Where is the stomata present? Here it is present. So in that case, directly in the atmosphere they are not exposed to, so that the transpiration will be less. Like for example, this is you can find the lower surface of the leaf. Now in this, what is going to happen is that the stomata, when you are seeing, it is not present outer, it is present inside. So here it is present, here it is present. Okay, in case if it is present inside, then we call it as what? Shrunken stomata. So automatically the amount of water which will be lost from here, since they are not in immediate contact with the atmosphere, the amount of water which is going out will be very less. Okay, so that is one way by which they adapt to the desert environment, harsh environment. Opuntia, when you are seeing a plant where their leaves are reduced to what? Spines, so that the transpiration is not taking place much. And photosynthesis is carried by whom? The stem is carrying out photosynthesis, as it is green in color, and the leaves are reduced to spine in order to reduce water loss through transpiration. And these plants, when you are seeing, they have a special mechanism for photosynthesis to reduce transpiration. You can find in this the stomata that remains closed during the daytime. At night time it is remaining opening, so that they can take carbon dioxide in the mesophyll cell, which can be used for what? Photosynthesis. So daytime it remains closed, stomata. Why? Because in order to reduce the loss of heat. Okay, so that plants we call it as CAM plants. Okay, carcinoid acid metabolism. So this pathway we call it as what? CAM pathway. Clear? Yes. So this is regarding desert plants. Like C4 plants you have, they reduce the water loss. Okay, that is the adaptation of photosynthesis in plants in order to reduce the water loss in desert environment. The next is your lizards. Okay, desert lizards, they regulate the thing by what? Behavioral means. Behavioral means what? They bring about a change in the behavior, so that they can adapt to the changes in the environment. So how do they? Like they bask in the sun. When the temperature goes down below normal, whenever the sun comes, they bask in the sun, they lie down in the sun, and they will be getting themselves heated up. Okay, the heat they are receiving it. Another thing is that they move to the shade. When it is too hot, they move to the shade, and when it is too hot, the ground itself, they make burrow and go deep inside, so that they are escaping from the heat. Okay, above ground heat they are escaping. So that ways desert lizards are adapting themselves. Next, when you are seeing mammals, some mammals, what do they have is that are living in the cold climates. Okay, these mammals, they have shorter ears and limbs and all, hands and all are very short. It's not long. It's not long. Why? If it is long, or it is having a much surface area, if it is long, isn't it? So surface area is more, means automatically heat loss will also be more. So they have to respire a lot to generate body heat. Energy will be lost a lot, isn't it? So in order to reduce the heat loss, what they are having? They are having shorter ears, shorter limbs. Okay, so they are adapted like that. With evolution, they adapted to have what? Shorter ears and shorter limbs. Why? In order to reduce the heat loss, minimal heat loss. Okay, and this characteristics, this characterization property of these mammals, we call it as what? Allen rules. What do we call them? Allen rule, and a very important 2-mark question. Okay, and in polar sea, aquatic animals and all, when you are seeing seals, what they have a thick layer of fat. Okay, so blubber is the name. So they are having a thick layer of fat, and what is this fat acting as? They are acting as insulators. Okay, they are not allowing the body heat to move out. Okay, so they are capturing the heat in their body and keeping it within itself, so that they are getting warmth. So they reduce the loss of body heat. Which one? This polar seals. Okay, so that is how the polar seals are adapting to the external environment. The next, when you are seeing the rest of the characteristics, what is that? Physiological adaptation. What is physiological? Functionally your body is performing in a different way. So how functionally your body is performing in a different way? Like for example, we, okay, humans, when we go into higher altitudes, okay, there the pressure is very less, oxygen availability is very less, and most of us suffer from a condition which we call it as what? Altitude sickness. What is the condition called? Altitude sickness. Its symptoms include nausea, yes, fatigue, tiredness, heart palpitation, means heart will be beating very hard, very fast, some sounds you cannot hear properly, skipping, like that heart palpitation will be there. So these are usually seen when you go to what? Higher altitudes. Okay, why? Because here the atmospheric pressure is very low. Okay, and the body does not get enough oxygen. In order to compensate this condition, I have to survive there, right? Somehow I have to live there, I should not die. So my body adapt. How they adapt? By increasing. So the low oxygen content has to be adapted. How to adapt it? Number one, by increasing the red blood cells. Okay, by the red blood cells divides very fast, and you can find the red blood cells count increases. Okay, that is number one. Second one is that decreasing the oxygen binding capacity. Binding capacity of hemoglobin is there now. So that is being decreased. Binding capacity is decreased. That is the second one. You have to reduce the binding capacity of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin binding to carbon dioxide, binding to oxygen, binding to carbon monoxide, to some extent it has to be reduced. Okay, it's not going to bind, no, it's binding, but to some extent it is reduced. Okay, and it is also increasing our breathing. We are also increasing our breathing rate. So when you go to higher, you breathe much, so much amount of air is moving in. Much amount of air is moving means much amount of oxygen will also go in. How much is there? Less, isn't it? So I need more, so I will be breathing faster, so that more oxygen will be getting in. Okay, and this carbon dioxide and all are not getting binded to hemoglobin because the affinity is less. So all of a sudden everything cannot go and bind very fast. Okay, so by increasing the red blood cell, so the number of hemoglobins increases. By decreasing the binding capacity of hemoglobin, so that the carbon dioxide is not getting binded absolutely, and by increasing the breathing rate, what we can do? We can withstand the changes which are taken place when we move on to the high altitudes. So these are the things which we have to which adapt to survive. Okay, so these are few examples which are given in this chapter, wherein you have to read the examples how plants and animals are adapted to different environmental conditions. Okay, some examples are given. Okay, in that the Allen's rule is very important, 2-mark question. In the next class we will be discussing about population attributes. Okay, thank you, have a nice day.